All right, we are back with another reflection on the daily Vedanta, and today we're going to tap into a little bit of the most dynamic, comprehensive library that humans have ever come across that can be asked questions in real time, otherwise known as AI and ChatGPT. So this is something that I was going back and forth with a friend on Instagram, just saying, just ask ChatGPT this prompt. If this sounds too crazy that this Vedantic philosophy says that there is this 5,000 plus old concept, I mean, truly it's timeless, but 5,000 plus years of continuous study has pointed to this underlying observation within the philosophical framework of Advaita Vedanta. The seat, the source of nearly all Eastern philosophy, going back to this and that observation, this thesis put forth, is that everything we're perceiving is an illusion. And the heart of the illusion is that there is separateness, when in reality, there is just oneness, known as non-duality within this philosophy. Advaita Vedanta. Advaita means non-dual. Vedanta means end of knowledge. If you listen to the first episode of this podcast, Intro to Vedanta, it's the 15-minute overview of the entirety of the philosophy. So you get much more than just this deep into the pool and the illusions part. But in the exchange I was having with a friend, he had shared something about this illusion of separateness, and I told him it's fun to ask ChatGPT this prompt. What are the proof points we know of that point to us living in an illusion, like Vedanta suggests? So that's all you got to ask. What are the proof points that we know of that point to us living in an illusion? You could just start there. You don't have to say anything about Vedanta if you don't want to. It is the oldest philosophical concept, framework around this illusion, but we see this come up over and over again, like the Greeks and the allegory of the cave, or all the way to the Matrix. But when you ask, what are the proof points we know of, that we currently know of? This is not like hypotheses, but what are the proof points we know of that point to us living in an illusion, like Vedanta suggests? And here's what ChatGPT says. Here's a structured breakdown of the strongest proof points or arguments, neuroscientific, philosophical, and empirical, that suggest we may be living in an illusion, consistent with Advaita Vedanta's concept of Maya, which means not that in Sanskrit. It's illusion or misperception of reality is how it's understood, Maya, but it literally means not that. Neuroscience and cognitive science. These show that what we perceive as reality is a construct. 1, perception is constructed. The brain doesn't passively receive data. It actively predicts what you see. Predictive processing model. What you see is mostly your brain's best guess. Reference Anil Sett's controlled hallucination theory of consciousness. Number 2, sensory limitations. We see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. We see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. We see less than 1% of what's visibly, that can be visibly observed. This is just what we know of, is less than 1% of visibly observable phenomena. With different instruments, you can see more. You can, quote unquote, see more, perceive more. We hear a narrow band of frequencies. Sonically speaking, we hear a fraction of the frequencies that we know that our cosmos can create. We, like a dog, can hear higher frequency sounds, like a dog whistle, for example. We perceive only 3D plus time, while physics allows for many more dimensions. This suggests what we experience is filtered, not the whole. Number 3, this is just the neuroscience bucket. Number 3, and I won't read the whole thing, but number 3, change blindness, inattentional blindness. You can look directly at something and not see it if you're not attending to it. Shows perception is not objective but conditional and mental. The seer's mind shapes what is seen. There are a number of examples. If you YouTube the example of someone walking in a gorilla suit while participants in this research study are tossing a ball back and forth. You have a person in a gorilla suit, or I've seen some examples in a bear suit, walk right behind them, or right in front of where their eyes would see, but they're so focused on the ball game that they don't see it. It's called inattentional blindness, meaning If we're not attentive to something, we do not perceive it. Second bucket is quantum physics, points to the non-objectivity and mental dependency of observed phenomena. Number 1, observer effect. The outcome of quantum experiments changes depending on observation. So observation changes the outcome of quantum experience. So observation, us observing something, will change the outcome of the quantum experiment, the double slit experiment, for example. This suggests consciousness or observation plays a role in collapsing probabilities into reality. Reality is not separate from the observer. So this suggests that there is no objective reality that's happening outside of the observer. Once something is observed, captured in consciousness, it affects what we think is going to happen, versus when there's no observer and the outcomes of those experiments. 2, non-locality and entanglement. Particles appear to influence each other instantly across vast distances. This breaks classical notions of space-time separateness. This is still in the quantum mechanics bucket. This undermines the independent, localized material reality assumption. Number 3, wave function is information, not stuff. A system is a wave of probabilities, until observed. This is mathematical, not material. Reality may be informational rather than physical. The last bucket that I'll read, because it's really worth just asking ChatGPT this on your own, is the dream argument. And we touched on this in the last episode. It reminded me of this Instagram conversation in this breakdown when you ask, what are the proof points that we know of? Not the hypotheses or what are the philosophical points put forward, but what are the proof points that we know of that point to this being an illusion? And this third bucket is the dream argument. Vedanta's core example is dreams, dream and waking parity. In dreams, you experience time, space, fear, desire, others, identity. Yet on waking, it's clear it was all mind created. How do we know this waking state isn't just a longer, more stable version of a dream? The Mandukya Upanishad distinguishes waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. None are final reality. They all feel extremely distinct and different. Deep sleep from a dream, dream from the waking state, but none are the final reality. And we know this because we pass in and out of each of them, and we swear that was real, and then something comes along that's more real. And in the Vedantic perspective, what is said explicitly over and over again with this philosophy is that of those 3 states, there is a 4th state, Turiya. And Turiya just means fourth in Sanskrit. There is a 4th state above them all, that when experienced, and it's hardly an experience because experience technically requires an object and subject interacting. There is just isness in the 4th state, but for lack of, or because of the linguistic limitations of trying to talk about these things and put them into words, we'll say it's an experience. The shorthand you can use, we will use the shorthand and say that it is an experience. But in that 4th state, Turiya, the experience, like waking up from a dream, shows that the lower experiences were not real at all. And this bucket touches on Descartes and Western echoes. I think, therefore I am. The rest of the answer goes through simulation hypothesis and informational ontology. You can actually just sum these things up. If I love saying, like, sum this up as if a 15-year-old could understand it. But when you go through it, and then you have another bucket, logical and experiential proofs. You have phenomenology and idealism. You have Western philosophical echoes like Kant, George Berkeley, or Berkeley. So I think how it's actually pronounced, even though it's spelled Berkeley. And I believe is the namesake for where Cal Berkeley is. The university town is technically should be pronounced Berkeley. To be is to be perceived, according to George Berkeley. And Donald Hoffman, interface theory of perception. Perception evolved not to show us the truth, but to aid in survival. Therefore, we see a user interface, not objective reality. And then it has a TLDR. Too long, didn't read. Summary table. Proof points being predictive brain, quantum physics, dreaming, simulation theory, rope snake analogy, Western idealism, interface theory, and then the proof points, and then the support for this philosophical notion of us existing in an illusion. Predictive brain one is we construct, we don't detect reality. Quantum physics, reality is probabilistic and observer linked. Dreaming one says simulated worlds feel real but are a construct of our mind. Simulation theory, advanced civilizations likely simulate. Alien civilizations or us in 1,000 years likely simulate experience, just like the advent of video games 30, 40, maybe it was 50 years ago. Simulated worlds, and just gets more and more ornate in how we simulate worlds. So 1,000 years from now, probably going to do the same. And if we can, and we got all of the computational bandwidth to simulate one world, maybe in 100 years, well, in 500 years, it's predictable that we'd have enough computational bandwidth to create multiple worlds, maybe one world for every living being. And in 1,000 years, infinite worlds with infinite amount of detail. Or in 1,000 years, you have infinite simulations with infinite details. Well, if that's the case, then there's one base reality, an infinite number of simulated realities 1,000 years from now. And the viewpoint there is, what's to say we're not already there? One base reality, infinite simulated realities. Chances are we're probably in a simulated reality, according to the simulation theory. And this goes on and on. But I then ask, knowing everything you know, what are the chances that this is an illusion? So after that question, the follow-up just seemed natural to say, knowing everything you know. Basically, AI is the culmination of all human knowledge, scientific, philosophical, religious, everything. And I just said, knowing everything you know, what are the chances that we're living in an illusion? Given everything we know from neuroscience, physics, Vedanta, and philosophical reasoning, here's a structured probabilistic assessment of the likelihood that we are living in an illusion or simulation, broken into 3 conceptually overlapping models of illusion. Cognitive illusion. What we perceive is not what exists. Claim. Our senses and mind do not reflect reality as it is. Likelihood. 99% plus. Our experience of the world is undeniably filtered, incomplete, and constructed by neural models. There's overwhelming evidence that what we perceive is not what is. Ontological illusion. The world isn't made of matter. Claim. Reality is not out there or physical. It is mental or awareness-based. Likelihood. 70 to 90%. Speculative, but growing. Increasing evidence points towards consciousness not being emergent from matter, but foundational. The fact that physics can't locate matter beneath wave function math supports this. And the last bucket, simulated illusion. We are literally inside a simulation. We are in a digital simulation built by another intelligence. Likelihood 20 to 50%. If we grant that advanced civilizations could run simulations and would likely do so, then the odds we are in a base level reality are statistically low, but there is no direct empirical evidence yet. So, combined estimate. What are the chances we're living in an illusion? Final estimate, 95 to 99% chance we're living in some form of an illusion. So, that is the ChatGPT answer. This is not from James. Everybody's ChatGPT will give you some form of bias, so that's why it's fun to ask on your own. But when you do ask it something like, what are the proof points we know of that point to us living in an illusion? It is fascinating, not just to read the answer, but then to ask the follow-up question. What are the chances, knowing everything that you know, what are the chances we're living in an illusion? This helps with this canvas problem when it comes to philosophy, where you go down a rabbit hole, you find a philosophy that you maybe resonate with, but you don't really know what else is out there. You realize there's this whole canvas of ideas that you might be forsaking when you go deep with one. But ChatGPT helps with that so much when you just ask it is this philosophy that I seem to resonate with? Are there proof points in the world, throughout history, science, that also support these philosophical ideals? Because ultimately, the philosophy of the future, it must make space for the best of religion, the best of philosophy, and the best of science, or it won't last. People will just ask AI and get an answer saying, no, science doesn't support this. It does not seem to be realistic. And that's on the downside. The upside is that it becomes that much more powerful when science, reason, philosophy, religion all support your worldview, your philosophical framework to the approach you take each day. And that is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. 95 to 99%. You don't have to take it from some random guy on the internet. Ask the culmination of all human knowledge. See what it says for yourself. We'll see you next time.